Of course, you had to know the building pretty well inside out. You had to be able to operate the projection box in case there was a problem with projectionists. In other words, you had to be able to put on the show yourself. Fortunately, it never actually happened to me that I had to do that, and I was dreading it ever actually having occurred, because I don't think I'd have been able to handle it, quite frankly. But I was lucky. In my time in the cinemas, I never really had to operate the projection box. But there was that, of course. There was the you had a fair amount of staff in cinemas in those days, so you had to be competent in handling the staff. You had to know all about safety regulations concerning the audience, and how the cinema actually worked, and all the paperwork involved, how to go about ordering films, and I'm sure there was a lot of other things which I just can't recall at the moment. Well, in the cinema, I'm sure it's much the same these days, I don't know, but as you came in the cinema, of course, either the manager, Sammy, or myself, the assistant manager, had to be in the foyer at all times to greet the people as they came in. Then once the patron had gone past us, of course they come to the cashiers and the actual confectionery kiosk. They're the first people they see as they come into the cinema, buy the ticket, get the sweets or whatever, and then it's into the auditorium itself, where they meet up with one of the usherettes who's taking the ticket off them. In those days, I don't know what you do now, but they tore it in half and gave you half back, and stuck the other end, the other half on a spike, which was like that that tall, and it was full of tickets by the end of the evening. And I never knew what they did with those tickets, but however, and then of course all the usherette staff were there, and you had the projectionist staff who were unseen by the patrons, as I'm sure they are today. They're just up in their little box at the back, and they're the real heroes of the show, you know, they're the ones who put the show on for you. And then the usherettes, of course, used to double up in the interval selling ice creams. They'd be there at the front of the auditorium with the trays around their neck with choc ices, ice cream tubs, nuts, crisps, or whatever they had, you know. And that was another one of their roles. We had doormen as well, and doormen tended to not do the usherettes' work. They weren't people who showed people to their seats, but they would do all sorts of other odd jobs. I mean, if there's any repair work needed to be doing or anything like that, then the male staff would tend to be the ones who did that. And of course, they'd be on the door as well sometimes, you know. I mean, we had at the Odeon Crosby, now the Plaza, we had a head of staff called Mr. Jessup, who was technically in charge of not only the male staff, but actually of the usherettes as well. And I think it was part of his duties to make sure that everyone was smartly dressed, so that when they all lined up for a parade, which they did occasionally, it's almost like a forces inspection, you know, a parade, but to make sure that they were all nice and smart. But during the day, it was just an ordinary business suit. Collar and tie, of course, which everybody wore in those days, and at about 6 o'clock in the evening, I think it was, we had to change into our evening suit. I used to call it my monkey suit for some reason or other, and that was the evening suit which the customers saw you in when they came into the show in the evening. I mean, in the afternoon, you weren't really, I don't know why, but it wasn't an essential that you met and greeted people in the afternoon if you had a matinee. It was only in the evenings you were supposed to do that. So the rank organisation insisted that you wear this this suit. Mine, when I first started the cinema job, I hadn't got one, and I didn't know where to get one. So I saw an advert in the paper for one on sale, second hand. So I went to have a look at it, and it fitted me. And I thought, this is great, and it was cheap, so I got it. And that's the one I always wore during my 2 years in the cinemas. And I found out later that this was, it was an early 1930s style thing, and it was well out of date by the time I bought it in 1957. But nobody ever commented on it, you know, and I got away with it.